this morning, but that's fine. He is too busy, but we're glad to just have him each and every week from CBS Sports, your fantasy football expert, David Richard. Good morning, Dave.
Dave, I'm sorry. I didn't get my beauty sleep last night, so my face isn't done up, and I can't be seen this way in public.
I'm glad you brought that up, by the way. I've told the listeners know my sister got me this ring, which monitors, amongst other things, my sleep. Jason, I hadn't even told you this. All-time career high last night of an 88. 88. I got 8 hours and 21 minutes of sleep last night.
3 questions.
Okay. I got so much sleep that random sound effects are firing off on the show. So I'm going to be extra great today. Dave, I'm on it, brother. First and foremost, I assume you're well as we head down into the stretch run, shall we say, of the fantasy football year?
Well, I mean, I'm not getting 8 hours of sleep, but we all can't live life on the good side like you are, my man.
Nope, that's true. We can't. It's only for the chosen ones. But I will tell you from a fantasy football standpoint, I am not – well, I'm living life on the edge. I'm living life on the edge of the playoffs in one league, completely out of – well, let me ask you this, David. Have we reached the point now where you're ready – there are leagues where, yeah, you're out of it, dude. Forget about it. You're just trying to set your team. And as a sub-question, because I know that's probably an easy setup there, are you a fan of punishing out-of-it teams for not still trying to compete?
Not a fan of that, although I just think it's just common courtesy and respectful to at least set a legal lineup each week. And I do think it would be wrong if, let's say you're playing your brother-in-law and you want your brother-in-law to win and you're out of it. You've got, let's say you haven't even won a game now, and you just find like the worst possible players to start. You're starting Devon Vele. You're starting I'm trying to think of somebody on the floor. You're starting Brian Robinson Jr. on purpose. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Because Brian Robinson Jr. scored last week, but he doesn't usually get as much work as Christian McCaffrey. I don't think that's right. I still think you try and make your best lineup possible. And then just on the first topic, man, as long as I'm not eliminated from the fantasy playoffs, I'm going to try. I'm going to make ad drops. I'm going to make trades. I'm going to do everything that I can to try and help my team win. And I admit it, I've got a team this year. I'm in 13 leagues. I've got a team that's 2-7.
Ooh.
And I'm not mathematically eliminated. I'm 5 games out from the 1 seed. That's probably not going to happen for me, but I can still make a playoff run. I'm still trying in that league. So as long as that's the case, I'm not interested in, I'll just set a lineup and then go on my merry way. I'm not doing that. I'm still trying to kick the teeth in on my opponent.
Well, Dave, yesterday the week started with just a dud. I mean, it was 10-7 fantasy-wise. I guess maybe some defensive points if you're playing defense special teams. But I thought Denver might end up with a big day against the Raiders. What happened last night to the offenses of those teams?
I think with the Raiders, it's a lot easier to explain. When their offensive line lost 2 starters, Geno Smith looked a little bit more like a deer in the headlights and had a hard time making decisions. And the pass rush of the Broncos has been amazing all year. They're on pace to set a record for the most sacks by a team in NFL history. They're doing that well. The only thing I can think of with Denver is that Bo Nix had an off night, and he had a number of off-target throws. He also got a little unlucky. He had a number of on-target throws that were either dropped or tipped up in the air and intercepted. It was just kind of a sloppy night for the pass game, more so for Denver being sloppy, because I don't even know if Las Vegas really even had the chance to have a semblance of a passing game. Also, Las Vegas, they had one touchdown called back by a penalty. They had a big run called back by a penalty, and they had a deep ball for a touchdown, but it went off of Dante Thornton's hands. So they got a little unlucky there, along with the offensive line issues. I would expect Denver to bounce back and for Bo Nix to bounce back. Raiders have Las Vegas next week. Or Raiders have Dallas next week, And I think that's going to be a tougher matchup now than it was a week ago this time because of the moves that the Cowboys have made. And that offensive line isn't going to be fixed in time for that game. So we could see the Raiders stay on the struggle bus a little bit longer. They're a team that's 2-7, 2-8, whatever their record is. They're out of it at this point.
Let's talk about Bo Nix as well, because I've actually got a guy who follows me on Twitter who I like me. We both have Bo Nix, and we've had different experiences. Not that Bo Nix has been perfect, but this guy is just convinced that Bo Nix is, to him, he's one of those, every time I start him, he sucks. Every time he sucks or he does great, I don't start him. Maybe it's a scoring situation, but I think Bo Nix has actually been more better than he has not this year. Give me your fantasy breakdown as far as Bo Nix, the year you think he's had, and whether or not, depending on who else is on your roster, you look him as a viable starter week in and week out.
Well, I don't think he's a slam dunk start anymore, although I would have told you that he was a top 10 starter this week going into the matchup because it's Las Vegas. And honestly, the Raiders pass rush, they deserve credit too. That was a tough matchup for them against that offensive line, and they were able to pressure Bo Nix quite a bit themselves. I don't have the number of how many sacks they had. I don't think they had that many, just a couple. But I know that Bo Nix was pressured, and maybe he was flustered a little bit. I think another part of the problem is that he doesn't have that stud number one receiver anymore. And I know that Cortland Sutton's there, but he's kind of taken a backseat to Troy Franklin over the last 3 weeks. Franklin has more than 10 targets than Sutton over their last 3 games. And Sutton is good. He's rangy, and sometimes he has good straight line speed, especially for a guy of his stature. But he's not as quick as Franklin. Franklin is not near as consistent of a receiver as Sutton. So he's got these 2 wide receivers that he's leaning on that are imperfect. If he had, it's so easy to say, if he had somebody like Jamar Chase or Puka Nacua, so, one of the stud receivers, Justin Jefferson in the league, of course he'd be better because that receiver would help him be better. And Sutton, to an extent, was that guy for him last year. This year, at least recently, it hasn't been that way for Cortland Sutton. So I think you've got to look at Bo Nix as, at best, a low-end starter. You've got to consider the matchups when that happens. He's got Kansas City next week. That's going to be a tough matchup, even though it's at home. I would suspect that Nix wouldn't be a good start in that game, but it kind of feels like Bo Nix, when he's got a tough matchup, that's when he shines. When he's got a good matchup, he stinks a little bit. And this is one of the examples last night.
Dave, who are your start and sits with that good matchup with the Niners and Rams this week?
Throw a rock, hit a player, start them in your fantasy league. I mean, it would be a lot easier to talk about the players that I wouldn't start, but it would also be a really boring list because I expect it to be a competitive game. I love it when these two teams play because they definitely gear up for each other. You could tell in the earlier game this season when it was Thursday night, and we thought, how much would Matthew Stafford have to do? 49ers are so banged up. And you know what? The 49ers went out there and they took it to the Rams in that game. And so I can't help but think that it's going to be another competitive game. Shanahan has really been a whiz this year using who he has at his disposal, to put up points and for the team to be good. And I think he'll find a way to execute again this week. I would expect Kittle and Jawan Jennings to be very much involved in that and to try and take advantage of a quick game passing, whether it's Brock Purdy or Mac Jones at quarterback. And honestly, like the players that I would be nervous about starting would be Purdy or Jones, Tyler Higbee for the Rams, Kendrick Bourne for the 49ers. And, honestly, that's it. I don't think you'd even consider Blake Corum or Brian Robinson Jr. Anybody else who's been a reliable starter from both of these teams, fire them up. Let's go. Should be a high-scoring game.
When we talk about quarterbacks, I know we just talked about Bo Nix. You said you wouldn't have him as a slam dunk each and every week, and I completely agree with you. What about Jared Goff?
He's kind of in that same boat, although this week he's taking on a Commanders team that just gave up 4 touchdowns to Sam Darnold in the blink of an eye. And so you can't help but think that Jared Goff could do that exact same thing. It just so happens that the Lions are coming off of a game where they not only lost, they had a hard time running the football. And so I wonder if their mindset is, let's get our run game back on track and lean into that. We already know that Jared Goff is in a good place right now throwing the football. I think it's a little dangerous when teams think that way going into a matchup that they just assume that they're going to win. But the Commanders are really in trouble on defense. They're missing a bunch of starters. Their secondary has been beat up. Obviously, we all saw that game on Sunday night. And their offense is beat up too. So I don't know how the Commanders stay competitive in this game. It could mean eventually that Jared Goff does have to throw, but it could be more of like a 225-yard, 2-touchdown game for Jared Goff, and not one of the big bonanza 300-yard, 4-touchdown games that we've seen from him before. I do think it's a big-time bounce-back spot for Jahmyr Gibbs.
Dave, we have a couple listener questions for you. Let's see here. Jordan Mason or Devin Singletary?
I'd go Singletary. As gross as it sounds, he had a good role last week for the Giants. Should be in a competitive matchup against Chicago. Jordan Mason, as long as Aaron Jones is healthy, the Vikings made it crystal clear to us. 30 snaps in the first half. 23 of them were for Aaron Jones. So you know the rest went to Jordan Mason. If you're not playing, you're not scoring fantasy points, I would sit Jordan Mason.
And the other one here I see, will you ask Dave about Pittman, or who's they should start, Pittman or McConkey?
I love them both, but I think Ladd McConkey's going to have more targets, more opportunities, and has the better matchup compared to Michael Pittman. They're both really good, but McConkey should see a good amount of volume against Pittsburgh. And we've seen that Steelers secondary. Last week, the Steelers won. They did a great job turning the ball over against Daniel Jones. There were still 3 wide receivers that did very well for fantasy for Indianapolis in that game. So McConkey is my favorite Chargers receiver. I think he's a top 10 receiver this week, and I would start him ahead of Michael Pittman, who could draw a tough matchup in A.J. Terrell in that secondary for the Falcons.
Also, a couple other questions here. Dave, are you starting Breece Hall only when desperate against Cleveland?
No, I'm starting him as a borderline must-start fantasy running back. Let's call him a top 15 fantasy running back. It's not a good offensive situation, but the one thing that the Jets did not do at the trade deadline was deal off pieces of the offensive line or the offense in general. Garrett Wilson's going to be back, and he'll command some targets himself, but I do think that the situation is still good for Breece Hall to get a lot of work and to run behind that offensive line. So I'm comfortable starting Breece Hall. I wouldn't do anything rash like start Breece Hall or sit Breece Hall for Jaylen Warren or David Montgomery, Kenneth Walker. Those guys, they're all in their own separate tier compared to Breece Hall.
And similar questions, I'll just pile them in together about DeAndre Swift and Devin Singletary.
Well, it's going to be Swift over Singletary. It might be Kyle Monangai over Singletary, too. The one thing that we've learned about that game between Chicago and New York this week, the weather in Chicago is not forecast to be quite nice. It's going to be windy. There could be rain. There could be snow. Soldier Field is right there on Lake Michigan, so there's always going to be some winds involved, but it could be heavy winds. That could impact the play calling for both teams in the game, and it could mean that the running backs get a lot of work. And we've seen Swift and Kyle Monangai, when they've played together over their last 2 games, it's been close in terms of not just workload, but also snaps played. Swift has an edge, so I like him better. I actually like him considerably better because I think he's more explosive than Monangai. But both of them are in play as starts in fantasy. So Swift, if I had to rank the running backs in this game, Dave, I'd probably say Swift, then Monangai, and then Tyrone Tracy, and then Devin Singletary. But Monangai, Tracy, and Singletary, very close to one another. Swift just head and shoulders above the rest.
We have a listener that wants to know if they made a good trade. Dave, did I make a good trade? Justin Jefferson and Hollywood Brown for Rico Dowdle and Xavier Worthy.
I think he gave up a little bit too much, but that's as we stand here right now. And it really would come down to format, too.
Yeah.
If it's not PPR, it might be close. But Rico, I had a hard time weighing the value of Rico Dowdle rest of season. Are we really to believe that he's never going to lose his role, he's going to stay healthy, and he's going to rumble for 100-plus yards no matter who he plays against? That's a little tougher to believe, although this week he takes on New Orleans. I strongly believe it this week. But Justin Jefferson, total stud, maybe underperforming a little bit just because J.J. McCarthy's the quarterback in Minnesota. They're playing at a slow pace. They're trying not to throw as much. These things do tend to impact players like Justin Jefferson. Not as badly as they would impact inferior players, kind of like Xavier Worthy, who's not getting the same type of target volume. I would lean toward Jefferson if catches count for anything is the better player in that deal.
How about Kincaid, Addison, or Jamison Williams for 2 flex positions?
I would sit Jamison of those 3, but they're all in that boom-bust range of you could start them and they might get you 16 fantasy points or they might get you 4 fantasy points. So start the 2 that I think are going to certainly have favorable matchups, and that's Addison for Minnesota and it's Kincaid for Buffalo against the Dolphins.
At this point, are are Chuba Hubbard owners listening to Sarah McLachlan and smoking a hookah or what?
I thought you meant like building a mystery. I don't know.
No, I meant like I will remember you, or whatever the one is where all the dogs and cats are all jacked up looking and they play Sarah McLachlan.
What videos were you watching when we were kids?
The commercial. You know the commercial where it's like it shows like the poor puppy behind a fence and she's like, I will remember, and then they're like, for only $1 a month you can help take
less
care
than
of
a
this
cup
puppy.
of coffee.
Yeah, and it's like if I give you who's the comedian said, yeah, go ahead.
We're throwing shade at the save a dog, save a cat people. Is that what's happening here?
No, I am a longtime donor / rescuer. I think they're incredibly effective. I'm just saying, are Chuba Hubbard fans having similar sadness in their eyes?
Would you save Chuba Hubbard from a life in a cage? No.
For $1 a
Chuba
day.
Hubbard can go to the waiver wire. The one exception would be, okay, you've got Rico Dowdle on your team and you don't have anything else on your bench. Having Chuba Hubbard as the handcuff for Rico Dowdle would make sense in the event that Rico Dowdle misses time.
All right. Last thing for you, Mr. Richard. Just a general rule. It kind of going back to what we talked about earlier about teams that are out of it and how they should perform. Are you also, especially in legacy leagues where you pretty much have the same turnover, are you a fan of the previous year's finishing order in some way dictating the following year's draft order?
Yeah, that's cool. That's a way to do it. It does it. The problem is that it might incentivize somebody to tank, because if they're on purposely losing and they lose out, now they've got the number one pick the following year. That's how it works in the NFL. I don't know if it should work that way in fantasy, but it is one thing that a lot of leagues do. I'm in a keeper league that does exactly that, and it makes all the sense in the world.
Yeah, maybe, Jason, we'd have to do like our own lottery like the NBA, and everybody gets so many ping pong balls.
Yeah,
also,
percentage.
can I just say, I'll just say this. We all know this. Having the number one pick in the draft, not always a blessing, Dave Richard.
No, but this year it's been pretty good.
Yeah, no, this year it's been really good. Oh, there we go. Sorry, I knew there was a question I wanted to ask you, and I know we're almost out of time. Who is your fantasy football non-quarterback MVP this year so far?
I mean, at this point, I think I'd lean on Javonte Williams being that guy, because expectations were low, but wow, you've really beat them, and he's done great, and Dallas's offense has been great, and he's given you the most bang for your buck as far as draft goes, no question.
Where does Jonathan Taylor sit there?
I mean, Jonathan Taylor he's been awesome, but we were drafting him in round 2, maybe round 3. So people knew to expect a good year from Jonathan Taylor. Fingers crossed that things would work out. He's just had some monster games. And Javonte's had some monster games too, Dave. Just not as monstrous as Jonathan Taylor has had. So for the price you paid for Taylor, the return has been great. For the price you paid for Javonte Williams, I mean, that's like buying Netflix stock 2 decades ago or whenever it was worthless, and now it's ballooned to major mucho dollars.
No, speaking of that, you don't have to pay anything other than your own time to be able to get all the wisdom and value out of Dave Richard and his friends each and every week. Where can people find you going into Sunday?
You know the deal. We are on YouTube every day. We just wrapped on our Starter Sit Part 2 episode. So if you've got a fantasy question, you're confused about who to start or sit, we can help you answer that. We talk about every player every week, over 2 episodes on YouTube. All you do is go to youtube.com, search for Fantasy Football Today. Our page will come up. You subscribe to it, and you will get all the alerts whenever we publish a video. We will be live with a mailbag episode at 8:30 your time, Dave. So you could ask your questions live, and we will answer them for you on YouTube. Search for Fantasy Football Today.
It's not as good as seeing his pretty face, but you know what he does damn well? Voice only on the phone. It's Florida's Dave Richard joining us from CBS Sports. Have a wonderful weekend. Bad luck to your college teams, and we'll talk to you next Friday.
Dave, don't let your life pass you by. Weep not for the memories.
Yes.
That's well done. Thank you, David. Have a good weekend. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Good luck in your leagues this week.
Thank you.
That's Dave Richards,
Perfect.
CBS Sports. We will take a break. Hey, listen, you know what I thought we'd do when we come back?
What's that?
You know what I thought we'd do? How about this? I had a Friday